What would you do if you were strung out on drugs and headed down the wrong road in life? Stay tuned to see how God turned our guest's life around. My name is Yvonne Lewis Shelton, and you're watching Urban Report. Hello and welcome to Urban Report. My guest today is Debra Hughes, a woman with a great testimony of God's goodness in her life. Welcome to Urban Report, Debra. Yay!
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I met you when I was in Cleveland, and I spoke at a wonderful church there, and you came up to me at the end of the service, and we talked, and you shared a little bit of your testimony with me, and it was like, okay, we've got to share this testimony on Dare to Dream. I really love for people, for our Urban Report viewers, to hear what God has done in our lives. And we all have a testimony. So
yes,
today, we're going to talk about yours. Okay, so tell us where you were born and where you grew up.
I grew up in Youngstown, Ohio, and another little part of Youngstown, which was Camels, another city, smaller city in the whole area. I grew up there. I was not necessarily say we were raised in a church, but I come from a divorced family. And once my father and mother got a divorce, then we weren't going to church anymore. But I would go whenever I was old enough to start going on my own. And I didn't go all the time. I would just go sometime, now and then, take my little sister, another little girl that was my sister's age, and we would go off and on the days we went.
Now, were you a Seventh-day Adventist Christian, or were you of another denomination?
Well, I was Baptist in those days, and I didn't know nothing about being a Christian. I didn't know what it meant. I just went to church because you were supposed to go.
Okay. And so you came out of a broken home situation. Your dad was gone, and so your mom was raising you and your sister alone?
No, I have three brothers. Well, one half brother, two brothers, and I have two sisters. And basically, my father wasn't out of our lives. He was very present. We would go up there. I would go and stay with him, say, summertime, for some of the summer, on all of our holidays. My brother would live with him off and on. My sister would live with him off and on, but my mother was my basic caregiver.
Okay. So you basically were staying at home. Your brother and sister kind of stayed with your dad from time to time, but you stayed more with your mom.
Yes.
At what point when you were in high school, what happened when you were in high school? How were your high school years?
I was bad. I got really good grades in school. Kind of attention deficit, so I bore very easily. So I do things to keep me excited. I got a lot of spankings when I was a little girl, and my grandmother gave you a good whooping. So I didn't do them again, but I was very creative. I created new things to get into. So by the time I was in high school, once I got to be 15, and so I started, I had already been drinking, just sneaking alcohol around, and when my mom's friends was over and I was a little girl, I would sneak some beer because, I always liked to taste them. I didn't like the taste of whiskey, but I would drink it, because, we had so many dysfunctions that went on in our family. We had molestations, people, just men in general that always seemed to like me. And I always thought of myself as a bad little girl. And that was my prayer all the time. God, just make me a good little girl. But it seemed like as I got older, I got more and more rebellious.
Well, let's go back because this is something that I wasn't aware of. So how old were you when the molestation started?
I believe I was 6 or 7 years old.
6 or 7 years old. And did you blame yourself? You thought that you were a bad girl?
they blamed me. They said it wouldn't happen if I would be a better little girl. Well, I didn't never know what it was I was doing that was making these people bother me. I guess that was just their excuse for what they were doing to me. And I would never talk about it with my mom.
So your mom didn't know?
No.
So who knew that you were being molested? Anybody else
Nobody.
know?
It was a secret.
So just the molester and you. And was
Right.
it someone in your family or a trusted friend?
Trusted friend and a family member.
So this started when you were 6 or 7, and that's when you started feeling that you were a bad girl.
Yes, I felt less than.
Isn't it sad that those seeds are planted and children don't realize that it's not their fault. They are victims. You were a victim. And yet you begin to feel like, I must be doing something wrong. It's got to be something bad about me that would make them do this to me. But it's so sad that it wasn't you. You were a victim.
And let me tell you this. I had a friend whose mother was abused by her boyfriend. So he called her one day and said he was coming over because he was going to jump on her. And she waited for him. When he got there, she shot him and killed him, and she had to go to jail. That was one of the reasons I never talked to my mother, because I knew how much my mother loved me. She would have defended me, and I was going to keep my mother.
So you were afraid that if you told your mom that she would do something to the molesters that would take her away from you.
Yes, her or my grandmother, who was the maternal.
Yeah.
The maternal.
Yeah, your maternal grandmother. Yeah, the matriarch of your family.
She was, yes.
Yeah.
Between the two of them, I was afraid.
So, oh man. So you kept it to yourself, but you began to kind of act out? Is this when you started acting out? So early on,
yes.
If it started at 6 and 7, you started drinking. When did you start sneaking these little drinks?
Oh, anywhere between 7, 8 years old. You know, I would drink. I drink just so I wouldn't hear them come in my room if that was going to happen. Sometimes they didn't bother. They didn't do it all the time. And, you know, I also had another girl that lived next door to us that always called me an ugly thing. So my self-esteem was very, very low. Very low. And my mother used to always tell me I was beautiful, but you know, she was my mother. She's going to say that anyway. So it took me a long time to overcome that. And that's farther down.
Isn't it interesting too, Debra, how as little girls, we internalize what's being told to us. So we think we're bad, or we think that we're not pretty, or we don't like our nose, or we don't like our lips, or we don't like whatever it is. And,
That's right.
and those thoughts just get buried into you so that the choices that you make reflect those beliefs about ourselves. And that's such a tough place to be. So 6 to 7, you started getting molested, and then around 7, 8, you started drinking here and there, here and there. So by the time you were 13 or 14, what was going on with you?
Well, by then, you know, I was still, you know, I started hanging around with the girls, and we were all experiencing more alcohol than anything else. But we had another friend that was with us whose sister sold drugs. So every now and then she would come with different kinds of pills, and we would be in school taking them. So between that and the alcohol, and we'd be at school and skipping school to go out and drink, and, you know, come back to school half drunk, and maybe get kicked out and all that stuff. We was a pretty wild bunch. And, you know, I felt good about myself. I felt good about myself because I was hanging around with a wild bunch, and I was wild just like them, very wild. And, you know, my mother was pretty much the type of person that allowed us to go as long as we took care of our home business. You know, whatever chores we had to do, our grades were pretty good or good, then we were allowed to go and experience life as far as just go to the little dances and go to the parties. We were allowed to do that. So me and my crowd, we were pretty wild at it.
And was your mother seeing this change in you? Did she know that you were experimenting with these pills and alcohol by this time?
She never mentioned it, so I don't think so, because by the time we get home at night, she's already gone to bed. So, he's really going upstairs and falling in the bed anyway.
So what was your rock bottom?
Basically, my rock bottom was really sick and tired of being sick and tired. I grew up, I was in 2 marriages. Both of those marriages were bad. And they were both abusive. But I stabbed my first husband, and I didn't feel remorse about it.
Well, what happened? Why did you stab him?
Because he laughed at me.
Go ahead, explain it.
He laughed at me. We was talking about something, and we were arguing and something, and he had one of them little snide remarks, and he laughed like that, and I grabbed a pair of scissors and threw them at him.
Ooh. So at that point, you didn't have, let's just say anger management was not one of your strong points.
None. No anger management. I was very quick to get angry because, when you realize, and I didn't realize these things until I came into recovery, that I was so mad at myself and I didn't like me. And so, I was taking it out on everybody. Everything that I blamed myself for, I was taking it out on everybody else, on the world.
And at this point, when you stabbed your husband, were you strung out on heavy drugs, or were you still doing alcohol and pills? Where were you?
I did pills. By that time, we wasn't even doing pills anymore. I was, because it took a while after him before I started getting back into all those psychedelics and stuff. By then, I was just drinking, and I'm not going to say I was drinking the day I threw those scissors at him.
But, it doesn't take, once you have been chemically bound to all these different substances, they're still in your body, you're still reacting to them. So whether you had been drinking that particular day or not, you still probably had all that stuff in your body, which impacts your mind and all that. So, and you didn't have Jesus yet.
No, I didn't
have Jesus yet. So,
and I'd always said that I would never hurt any man again and call him my man.
And so, go ahead. So what happened?
And that got into my second husband, who really controlled me, because since I called him my man, he took over, and he took me hostage.
So you went from one situation where it was a bad marriage to like the flame from the frying pan into the fire, so to speak, into another one where you were just controlled by this husband. So this was abuse. Was he physically abusive as well?
Physical, emotional, mental. Now, let me tell you, it was some good times. We would have good times, but that's when we were smoking marijuana or doing some drugs. Whenever we weren't using, I never knew what kind of mood he was going to be in. Sometimes if I could see him coming in from work, because he had his own business, he was a good provider. And if he had his own business and I see him with a look on his face before he came in the house, I'd shoot the kids out the back door, and we go run and get in the car and go off for a while. By the time we come back, he might be in a better mood. He was the same as me, triggered by anything. So if work didn't go well for him, he'd come home and I might hear about that. So I tried to find ways to escape, and, and it wasn't always easy.
Yes.
It wasn't always pretty. So, it was so many times when it was just so bad. And, your children are going through that too, because, you find out later on in life how they wish that you weren't there and we didn't stay there anymore. Although they loved their father, they didn't like being there with him because of mommy.
Absolutely.
You get whooped with a belt and stuff just right in front of them.
Yeah, there are so many women who are caught up into abusive relationships who don't really know what to do and feel like, there's this whole cycle of abuse. So, the person's not abusive necessarily 24/7. He could be abusive, today, and then not abused for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, whatever. But there's this like honeymoon cycle. It's a cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So everything is great. And then there's the tension building cycle where, like, when you saw him coming in looking like he might go off, you left because you knew that anything could trigger. So it's like you were stuck. And there's so many women who feel stuck. And people on the outside say, well, why don't you just leave? Well, why don't you? But it's not that easy. It's
No,
not
because
that
you
easy.
get used to stuff like, okay, if you leave here, you better not take my kids. And if you take my kids, I'm going to find you and I'm going to kill you. And I remember leaving one day and going across the street and stand at this girl's house that was across the street hiding me. And he walked up and down the neighborhood with his shotgun. So I knew he's like, and they tell her if she comes back, if she don't come back home, I'm gonna shoot all of these children. That's what he say, stuff like that. So I go home, and he'd be great with me until it was time again, whenever that time came. And that's the way it was.
How did you get away from him, and how did you find Jesus?
We both went into recovery. He spent a lot of money getting high, and in them days, I didn't know it was a disease of addiction. I'm thinking it's just spending too much money, and you need to go get some help. Not that I needed to get some, just him. But he did go and get some help, and when he went to go get some help, he was doing all right. He went into recovery about 3 weeks before I did, but because of the fact that he was doing so well and he was changing. I want to go too. I better go. Well, I wasn't like I wanted to go. It's some girl called him and asked him for a ride. That's how I got in there.
Oh.
He told her, he said, okay, baby, I'll pick you up. Well, the baby part didn't bother me because he called everybody baby. The I'll pick you up had me dressing too.
Oh,
So
okay.
so I went to a meeting the first time in my life, and I was bored there. I didn't understand what it was I was looking for. And these women gave me a bunch of numbers to call and stuff, but I didn't call them. And when I left that meeting that day, I went and got a beer. I didn't relapse. I just didn't quit because I didn't know what I thought I was okay because I went to a meeting. But about a couple weeks later or a week later, I decided to go on my own and try this thing called recovery. Just try it. It wasn't easy. I didn't go into rehab. I didn't have the insurance to go into rehab. So I had to cold turkey it at home and go to a meeting every day. Just go to meetings and suffer every night. This guy next door to us sold alcohol, he sold drugs, and I wanted to go over there so bad. I would lock myself in the room. I would rock in my bed at night, and they told me pray every night. In the morning, pray for the obsession to go away, and at night, thank God for taking the obsession for the day. So I was praying in the morning and praying in the night. When you go to a meeting and you hear people bring up God, you think, oh, shoot. Oh, no, but they're not talking about God here. I know he don't have nothing to do with me. He's not going to do nothing for me because he don't like me, But I did what they said because I was so scared of everything. And this is what I did. I started learning day by day that if this is what he's doing and he's doing it another day, he gonna do this. So I started having the belief that he was doing this every day. I had never done it before. I didn't know that I could pray to stay clean, but just by praying, I'm staying clean. I heard my husband say in the meeting one time that he wouldn't let nothing stop his recovery, even if he had to leave his family. And I'm thinking, leave me? Well, now that he's getting better, but he's not going to leave me. So I started being worried that he was going to leave me. But that's just the way that it turns out. He's still clean today, but his actions started going back to some old behaviors. Now I know the Lord, and when he said something about jumping on me, I told him, you ain't going to do nothing. And then when he raised his hand to hit me, I said, put your hand down. And he did. And my faith in God just zoomed. But it didn't, it was still a beginning for me. learning for him to keep me this way on a one day at a time basis. And I was asking him every day, and he was doing it every day. But then this girl came and asked me to be her sponsor, to sponsor her through the 12 steps. And I was working with my sponsor. I started helping her. And somebody else came and asked me, and somebody else came and asked me. And people started asking me more and more as I was staying clean. Before I knew that I had 45, 50 people I was sponsoring. And I was using everybody to sponsor each other. And we was using as prayer. Everything that they asked me, I would say, what would Jesus do? And I bought everybody them little bracelets that had the WW, JD on it, so that they can ask themselves that, But as I did this, I started reading my Bible. I started reading all of the Ellen G. White books. She was introducing me to concepts about God that I had never, ever even known. She's the one that taught me my Bible.
How did you get introduced to Ellen White books?
I was already in the Seventh-day Adventist. My mother became a Seventh-day Adventist when I was 15 or 14. And every now and then I would go to church with her. But once they told me, because I had been baptized before, but I got baptized in a Baptist church because I think you're supposed to do that. So we got to get baptized because we have to get baptized. But when I started going to church with, going to my mom's church every now and then, I got convinced on the Sabbath day. So I said, well, I need to be in this church because the Sabbath day is the day. So I'm going here. And so I started going there, and I eventually stayed there, just stayed there.
Did you get rebaptized? Did you get baptized again?
I got rebaptized 3 times.
Okay.
Or twice, yes, because, once I came into recovery, I got rebaptized, but I wasn't in recovery when I got rebaptized. It wasn't, I got baptized again when I knew the Lord, because all my old days, the old behaviors, the stuff that goes along with using drugs, my body was dirty. And I wanted my body, my mind, and everything clean. And when they put me up under that water, I saw this garden up under there, all these pretty flowers. That's what I saw with my eyes closed. It was like, wow, heaven is just made up of everybody.
Yes.
And then, I was always afraid of being dipped in the water because I couldn't swim that well. And I was always afraid I would drown up under there. But when he put me under there, I felt like I could hold my breath forever. It was just a whole new feeling.
It's so amazing to, you go down, and they call it in the watery grave, you go down and you're unclean, you come up, your sins have been washed away. Baptism is the most beautiful, amazing thing. It's a feeling that you can't even describe. You can't even describe it. It's so, you feel so clean. Because you are clean, because all your sins have been washed away. And you're starting fresh, clean slate with God, clean.
That's right. And when you go into the rooms of recovery, they tell you that they're going to help you get a new way of life. Well, I didn't know what that meant. A new way of life was just not using. If I'm not using drugs, that's a new way of life, but that's not what it is at all. It's just like Christianity. It's a new way of life. Now we have a God-given program, and we start to acting like the things that God teach us are the ways that we're supposed to be learning how to carry ourselves. It takes a while. Because recovery, it didn't take me overnight to become an addict. It definitely wasn't going to take me overnight to be different. Some people think that, okay, now I'm in church, I'm okay. But no, I'm still so full of stuff. 25 years later, there's still stuff in me. It ain't as bad as it was, but it's still stuff that I know that he's still working on me. I'm a work in progress. And now, before it was little Band-Aid things, now he goes,
that's beautiful.
He said, I got to cut you.
It's been 25 years. Since you've been clean. Praise God. What are you doing now? We only have a few minutes left. What are you doing now?
I have a book. It's called, me and my husband, it's called The Uncompromised Truth. And it is Uncompromised Truth. It's, we talk about things in there that's in the Bible, and we back it up with Bible scripture. So, you can get it on Amazon and stuff. I'm also a women's ministry leader now. That was so amazing to me. You know, I held a lot of programs a lot of positions in the program of recovery. I've spoken in so many different states and in so many different conventions and stuff as far as my life and what it was like, even in London, England. I've been over there too. But the amazing part is you know, me having positions, secretary, general service representative, but coming home and somebody calling me and asking me if I'll be the women's ministry leader. Well, first thing I said was no, I can't do that. No way. I won't know what to do. They said, well, you sponsored all those women. We thought you might could do this. And I had just asked the Lord because I was back in Youngstown from Alabama. And I asked him, I said, what am I doing here? I said, I'm not doing anything. I'm not being used in any way, Lord. And I wish you would use me. And so when they asked me that, which was about 5 days later, and I said, no. And I said, I can't do that. And I said, wait a minute. Wait a minute. I said, I just asked God. I said, I'm going to have to say yeah. I'm going to have to say yeah. And that was like, this is my 4th year doing this. And so, you know, it's not so, God is amazing.
Yes.
He's amazing. I'm in awe every single day, because I don't never know what's next. But we have a 3rd step that says, made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand him. Once I got an understanding of who he is, I realized I turned my will and life over to my understanding of him. And I believe that everything that happens in my life is supposed to happen. Yes. So I deal with it when it comes. I don't get mad and get upset because it's there. But sometimes then I say, okay, Lord, you want me to do this. I came home from Alabama and I was homeless. 20 years clean and homeless. And I stayed with a couple, but I wasn't happy there because, you know, you start to thinking that you're in their way. And my son had a home, but they were now living in an apartment. So they didn't have room for me, and they always welcomed me. So what I had to do.
You got like 50 seconds to tell me what you did. Tell us what you did.
I read this book. And it said something about tell God what you want. And I said, God, I need a home. And my friend came and said, I got a place for you. And she gave me a place to stay where just my own little room in a homeless shelter. And I stayed there for like 5 months and got my own place. And and that's what happened. You know, we have plans. I have plans for to open up a place for offenders to come in when they get released, to come and learn a new way of life.
Praise the Lord.
I believe everything will happen if you dare to dream.
That's all right. And you know what? How can we end on a better note than that? Dare to dream, give your heart to Jesus, and he will make a way for you. Thank you so much, Sister Debra, for sharing your testimony with us. We so appreciate it. And thank you for watching. We've reached the end of another program. Join us next time, because you know what? It just wouldn't be the same without you.